Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Now, I don't know if the Karen of this story has woken up that morning on the wrong side of the bed or she's always been a horrific human being, but what she did, it can't be forgiven. Period. It all started one morning when I decided to hit to Walmart to buy a stroller for my baby, since the one we've had so far started to give us a hard time lately. We tried our best to fix whatever went wrong with it, but it was just too much to handle. And to be honest, it's understandable, it wasn't new. This stroller was in the family for so long, and it was about time to give it a medal and let it enjoy retirement after so many years in service. Anyways, it was intended to be a quick purchase, get in, grab a stroller, check out, hop into my car, and drive back home to my sweet baby that was being watched at the time by his older sister until I got back with his new stroller. And that's exactly what I did. In less than 15 minutes, I was in and out with a brand new stroller I was pushing in front of me to my car parked in a store parking lot. So far, so good. But it all started when I reached my car and found a woman blocking me in with her SUV, even though there were plenty of free spaces around for her to park in any of them. "Hi there, do you mind letting me out?" I ask her while pointing to my car. She gives me a condescending look, then looks back into her phone. "That's my car back there, and if you don't mind, I'd like to leave now," I politely told her. Didn't even look at me this time and completely ignored my existence. I have been suffering from anger issues for a long time, but the moment I knew I was pregnant for the first time, I started seeking help to get rid of it, or at the very least control it somehow. And thankfully I got over that crisis by a huge margin. And so far I've had almost zero problems caused by that dark side of me. So knowing I shouldn't let anger get the best of me in that situation, I decided to stay as calm as I could be and try to resolve this issue without getting exposed to more provocation from that idiot woman. So I walked past her car and into the security guard booth in the parking lot and let the guy over there know what's been happening and that I would like him to come over and get this woman to move so I could leave and get back home to my children. He understood, then walked back with me to where I was parked to try and resolve the situation. By this time I was still to this point, pushing the stroller I just bought right in front of me the whole time. I couldn't really reach my car to even put that thing in it. So yeah, I've been pushing it throughout the entire altercation. The security guard walks up to Karen in her car and tells her, "Hi ma'am, do you mind moving your car so this lady could get into hers over there and be on her way? It's illegal anyways to stop where you are, and now that it's even bothering other people on top of it, I have to ask you to move your car and let her out. And please, feel free to park wherever you'd like as long as it's in a properly dedicated parking spot." I don't know what triggered it, but all I know is that the ice-cold woman that was giving me zero attention earlier started boiling and turning red the moment the guard told her to move her car so I could get out with mine. She didn't say a single word to us, even though we could really feel the daggers she's staring at us at that point. Then she finally started properly reacting to our very reasonable polite request, or so we thought. And still, without saying a thing, she reversed her car a bit. It was still tight for me to get out, but I'll take it. I'll try my best. I started pushing my stroller towards my car while the nice security guard sincerely offered to help me put my stroller into my car. And while we were having a small conversation whether to put it in a trunk or would it fit better on the back seat, Karen decided to let her demons take over and pushed her gas pedal and ran both of us over with her car. Neither of us lost consciousness, and thankfully the stroller softened the hit we both took a bit. Especially as I realized later that she hit the brakes the moment she made contact with both our bodies. The security guard had it worse than me, poor guy, but the worst part was that the stroller was crushed, completely destroyed. Of course, I don't mean that a mere stroller is much more important to me than both my life and this poor guy's life, but the moment I realized that this woman had no freaking idea that this stroller was in fact empty, and that she probably did what she did thinking that my baby was inside the stroller, I saw red. Remember the anger issues that I mentioned above that I suffered from in the past? Yeah, in that exact moment, those past anger issues felt like a child's toy compared to the boiling emotions that engulfed me right then and there. It was getting fueled by one solid question. What if my baby was actually in that stroller when that woman decided to run us over with her massive car? And once I realized the answer to that question, I snapped. I charged towards her car door, but before I could reach it, she seemed to be in the midst of opening it to check for the damages herself. But I didn't wait for her to get out of the car. I grabbed her hair and dragged her out, threw her on the ground and started swinging like a mad person. I definitely wasn't in my right mind at that moment, and I feel like I snapped back to reality in the ambulance getting treated by the EMTs right before I passed out completely. I woke up in the hospital the next day with my husband and daughters right next to my bed. Then my husband filled me in regarding what happened. Right after the doctors assured me that my condition was stable and that I was lucky to leave an accident like that with just bruises and minor cuts. After I started wailing on that woman in that parking lot, more security guards rushed to the scene and pulled me off of her until the cops and EMTs arrived. All three of us left in ambulances, including the Karen that ran us over, because I may or may not have broken her nose and left her with more cuts on her face than I ended up having myself. After further investigation and the statements I and the injured security guard gave to the detectives and the CCTV footage that caught the whole thing that happened that day in the parking lot, Karen was charged with attempted murder and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As for me, I'm back home and gladly surrounded by the people that love me. I may now need to resume my anger management sessions after all I went through and what I did to that woman. But I'm feeling positive that I will get over this as I did in the past. Thank you all for listening to my story. It was a pleasure of mine to share it with all of you. Edit. Normally you buy a stroller in a box and you'd assemble it yourself back home, but that was the last piece, the displayed one, and it was already assembled and I decided to take it. Just needed to point that out since some people asked about why I was pushing it out of the store already. I can't believe it's come to this. My brother, the one I've always been so close to, had thrown a curveball my way that I never saw coming. It all started a few weeks ago when my brother and his fiancée asked me to be a bridesmaid in their upcoming wedding. Of course, I said yes without hesitation. After all, I love them both dearly and I couldn't be happier for them. Little did I know that agreeing to be a bridesmaid would come with a twist that would rock my world. We were all on a video call laughing and sharing wedding ideas when my brother casually dropped a bomb that turned my world upside down. I hope this doesn't cause any issues, he said with a hesitant voice. I want to ask your ex-husband to be one of my groomsmen. My initial reaction probably wasn't the best, but it was genuine. What? Why? Are you serious? What the hell? You see, my ex and I have been high school sweethearts, swept up in young love that we thought was unbreakable. We married young, but it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. Our relationship turned toxic, and despite no infidelity or abuse, we grew to resent each other. We were too young to recognize the signs and too immature to fix the damage. By the time we hit 25, we were divorced and ready to move on. And that's what I did. I moved away, got a new job, and started over. I hadn't spoken to my ex in almost 5 years, and to be honest, I had no desire to. But my brother dropped the bombshell that he and my ex had remained close friends all this time, despite my brother never mentioned it to me before. It felt like a betrayal, a secret being kept from me. My brother went on trying to explain his reasoning. He said that he understood it might be awkward, but it was just for one day. He assured me that they would keep their distance during the wedding events and that my ex and I wouldn't have to interact. He claimed that both my ex and I were important people in his life and that he wanted us both to be part of his special day. I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to support my brother. On the other, I couldn't fathom being in the same wedding party as my ex. There would be endless activities that required us to be in close proximity for extended periods of time. It was a recipe for disaster, a trigger for old wounds I had worked so hard to heal. I told my brother as much. I laid out my feelings, my discomfort and my pain. I explained that if he insisted on having my ex as a groomsman, I might not be able to fulfill my role as a bridesmaid. I might even reconsider attending the wedding altogether. It was a difficult conversation full of emotion and frustration. My brother wasn't ready to give up though. He tried to bargain with me to convince me that it wouldn't be as bad as I thought, and he pleaded with me to put aside my feeling for one day, for his sake. But this was non-negotiable for me. My heartache and my need for self-preservation were too strong to ignore. Days turned into nights as we continued our back and forth. I could feel the weight of our family's expectations, the pressure to make this right for the sake of the appearances. And then the reinforcement arrived in the form of my younger sister and my mother. They called me one after the other, urging me to grow up and stop being petty and immature. Come on, you can handle being in the same general area as your ex for a short period of time, my sister chimed in. It's not about being mature or immature, I shot back. It's about protecting myself and my emotional well-being. You don't understand the pain and memories that would resurface. My mother's voice was gentler but equally insistent. Your brother's wedding is a special occasion, and you're letting your past cloud your judgment. I understood where they were coming from, I really did. And from an outsider's perspective, it might seem like a simple ask, but they don't know the depths of the wounds that still lingered. The nights I spent crying myself to sleep after the divorce. The years it took to rebuild my life. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a constant state of turmoil. I loved my brother and I wanted to be there for him, but I also knew that I had to prioritize my own mental and emotional well-being. It wasn't about being bitty, it was about self-preservation. Finally, after much soul-searching and countless sleepless nights, I made my decision. I called my brother and told him I love you and I want nothing but happiness for you on your wedding day, but I also need to put my own healing and well-being first. I can't be a bridesmaid if my ex is a groomsman. It's just too painful for me. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear his disappointment and frustration, but I also knew that I was making the right choice for myself. The days that followed were a mix of relief and sadness. I had stood up for myself, asserted my boundaries and made a difficult decision, but it also meant that I wouldn't be standing by my brother's side on his big day. The weight of that realization was heavy, but I knew it was the right path for me. And now some comments on the post. Someone says, "You are the jerk. I mean, look, it's your brother's wedding. You obviously don't have to go. If you don't, you're basically giving your brother the finger. You knew that your brother was close to this person before you got together, so it shouldn't actually be that big of a surprise that they are still close, even though the two of you split. There wasn't any abuse or cheating, just two people who weren't good for each other. I am with your family. This feels pity. I've been at weddings with my ex. You haven't spoken in 5 years, so just keep not speaking to each other. If he tries to talk, just move along and ignore that he's there." Another commenter adds, "Unless there is some information missing, soft, you are the jerk. There is nothing wrong with not wanting to be in a wedding and have to engage with your ex, but refusing to go, period, is a pretty hard/seemingly petty line to draw. Especially if, by your own admission, you both decided to end your marriage and walk away. I think it's important to recognize that your ex seems to have no issue being in a wedding with you, and seems fine staying in his lane. So while the rest of your family shouldn't be bothering you, you have to realize that in comparison to him, you do look petty and immature because you're unwilling to put past grudges behind you for one day to support someone you supposedly love. It sounds like the real reason you're upset has nothing to do with the fact your ex will be there. It's that your brother remained friends with your ex, and it's understandable to be upset that it feels like someone you love didn't take your side. However, you need to have an honest conversation with your brother. You need to actually communicate that it hurts, that he was just able to overlook everything that led to the end of your marriage and stay friends with your ex. Your feelings are not invalid, but if you love your brother and want to maintain a relationship with him, you need to talk with him about the real reason you're upset and figure out a way to move forward. A third commenter goes with, "Oh, that's a tough one. Alright, I married my sister and brother-in-law's best friend. It was awesome and then we got divorced. Blah blah, long story. Never once did I expect my family to stop talking to him, inviting him to things and so on. We had all known him our whole life. He had been at family events and so on. Now, I don't know what your situation is or if there is more to this breakup you aren't willing to communicate over Reddit, but like many people have said, either you move on and move forward or you stay stuck. I don't think you're the jerk, but I think you're being one to your brother for placing your feelings over his wedding. Clearly, your ex is an important person to him, as you are. If him being present at the wedding disturbs you that much, there's clearly something you aren't saying here and need to privately discuss with your brother. Otherwise, you're holding a grudge and that gets you nowhere. Update. In the end, my brother did have my ex as one of his groomsmen, and I watched from a distance as they both stood by his side, radiant smiles on their faces. I attended the wedding as a guest, supporting my brother in a way that felt right for me. It wasn't easy, and I felt a twinge of sadness as I watched the festivities unfold. As I stood there watching my brother exchange vows with the love of his life, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead us to our own growth and healing. It might have been a story with its fair share of entitled people, but in the end, I had taken control of my own narrative, and that in itself was a victory. Hey guys, you might have noticed that I've been changing things up a little bit in my stories lately. I'm trying out slightly different kind of stories, while still staying close to what I usually do. My videos will always have a couple of interesting Karen stories, But recently, I'm also adding some Aita stories. These stories where people deal with some sort of entitlement or a tough situation and they are not sure what to do, so they ask for opinions. Yeah, those ones. I even thought about reading an Ask Reddit post and see how everyone likes it. And actually, that's what I'm about to read you now, by the way. I'm just trying out new things, Experimenting a little while keeping the good Karen stories that most people came here for. So yeah, I just wanted to share what I've been up to lately and keep you in the loop. And now, let's continue with our video. What's a small, seemingly insignificant decision you've made that ended up having a huge impact on your life? Someone saying, I got on the wrong train in a new city on my way to a minimum wage job that I didn't really want, but I needed it back then. My phone's GPS wasn't that great, so I asked a random guy for directions. Turns out he was going in a similar direction. We rode the train together and started talking about movies we liked. He wanted to be a filmmaker just starting out, and I was just a big fan of films. Without much education after high school or any plans to work in the movie industry. Eventually, we became roommates and started working together on film projects. A couple of years ago, we actually sold our first film to IFC. Another commenter adds, I went to prison because I committed a robbery. I was also on heroin at the time. I stayed there for almost 5 years and then I was sent to a work center. But things didn't go well because I got in trouble and they said I had to stay longer, which made me very sad. Then something happened. The person in charge called the warden, said they had an idea. They asked if I could paint a big picture on a wall at a local high school. It was supposed to be their mascot. They said if I did that, they would forget about the trouble I got into. They knew I was good at drawing, that's why they asked. Even though I had never painted something so big before, I thought really hard and figured out how to make the small picture, in my mind, into a big one on the wall. And I did it. About 6 months later, I was allowed to leave prison, and I decided to make painting my job. Now I am married and happy, and I have so many people who want me to paint for them, and I'm booked until next summer. I even have my own business. This September will mark 10 years since I left the prison. And guess what? I put my initials in the picture I painted at the high school right there in the mascot. A third commenter goes with, I joined the green card lottery. My friend was trying to understand how it worked, so I got the instructions and filled out an application to show them how. Instead of bothering them for their details, I used my own information for practice. I thought, why not? And put my application in the mail, not really thinking about it after. Almost a year later, I was super confused when I got a letter from the State Department. I've been living in the US for 20 years now, got married, had kids, and the whole deal. It was a huge change in my life. and all it took was a quick 15-minute thing I did to help my friend.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.